Well, certainly, if you listen to the commentary from the French ministers themselves and the French security forces, they're concerned that the Olympics is actually putting a giant focus on the problems that France and particularly Paris has been suffering under since these waves of mass migration have happened, because these rapes are not new, nor are the beheadings, nor is the crime wave. They've had social discord there for a while. I mean, the beautiful parks and avenues that you think of in France when you remember back to these films, they have been covered in shanty towns for a long time now, for a good 5 years. And I know that the French security forces have now blanketed the shopping centres, the venues, the schools, their churches and their landmarks with guys carrying very large machine guns. And you can understand why. I mean, we had in 2022, you're totally right to talk about this before, there were 3 killed in an Islamic terror attack where a woman was nearly beheaded. A school teacher was beheaded in Paris by one of his students. A man stabbed 6 children, including preschoolers, in the French Alps, I think it was just this time last year. Now, that level of brutality is terrifying and shocking to Westerners who are not used to this behaviour. Do you think this huge surge in security is making tourists feel sad, or is it a little bit sad that a city like Paris is facing these struggles?
Well, it's sad that a city like Paris is facing these struggles, but you make a good point. I think that this enormous focus on Paris is a good opportunity to say this is not just about the Olympics. This is about a long-running immigration program into France and much of Northern Europe. And how long can this Western nation suffer from having large numbers of people who do not integrate, who don't want to play by the same rules? I think that's something that we don't quite appreciate. There's the notion of you bring in people with very different values and you try to integrate them. But because of the course of multiculturalism, that sort of discussion for many years now, and its acceptance, we have a group of people who don't want to integrate. They simply don't want to play by the rules. That's the dangerous thing. So this focus in Paris in the next couple of weeks, that is the political focus, I think is probably a good thing for France, because they've got to find ways in which they can say no to those they don't want to come into the country, and how to liberalise those who are already in the country and, setting up, especially down in Marseille and the southern areas, that they have to become good French men and women. And I know the French are very strong in that.
Well, playing by the same rules is effectively a description of culture, because culture is not just a set of written rules, it's a set of unwritten rules as well about how people behave, how they interact with each other, what their values are, and what the direction the society is actually moving in. Now, I'm going to throw up a video beside us here or shortly of a Paris street with third world migrant slums in the background and those hideous green e-bikes parked along the front of the stage. We've got them here in Sydney as well. You can't walk without tripping over the deluge of e-bikes. Now, this is a marriage of lofty environmentalism side by side with this ramification of mass migration, and it certainly hasn't made the streets of Paris greener or cleaner. Do you think Paris is showing Western governments not only a clash of cultures, but also this awkward collision of political ideologies, where you've got a lot of our kids in university class, they believe that what they're preaching, what they're doing is making the world greener, but when you look at Paris, you don't see a city that's green and clean.
No. You make a good point. It's a wonderful illustration of the gap between what needs to be done to secure our liberal democracies and what the elites think. So the universities and kids going through university think it's really good that they can save the world by pushing along a little bike with a battery on it, whereas in fact the reality of their lives sits right in front of their noses, which is that hundreds of thousands of people who settle and have permanent rights in France do not want to play by the same rules and may well be a threat to that society. Not just an individual threat to men, women and children passing through Paris, but a threat to that society. So it's an observation you make that's so acute that these kids and their university professors are off in another land literally, thinking that they're doing some good, but in fact doing great harm by not defending liberal democracy.
Yes, I'd argue the green bikes do harm even in the best of societies, because I can tell you, if you go and walk through Hyde Park, you have to step over these corpses of broken e-bikes, and that's not better. It's definitely not an improvement on the situation.
I live in a fairly trendy part of Brisbane on the river, and there are bikes falling all over the place, and it annoys me because I walk a lot around those areas, and they're also dangerous. They're kids. How dare they? Whizzing past me at 50k an hour. And I just feel as though I want to tip them over if I could catch them.
Yeah, I hope viewers accept our small indulgence there in a shared dislike of this e-bike revolution. Look, given the volatile state of the world and calls for various nations, including Russia and Israel, to compete in the Olympics without their flags, are you concerned that this may be one of our last Olympic Games as the world once again puts it on hold for a period of conflict? Because games are meant to keep nations talking. It's meant to be a way of competing and sharing interests, but that doesn't work so well when there's actual conflict between nations that are competing.
I'm not pessimistic. I think who knows what will happen in 4 years' time, but I'm pretty sure the Olympics will occur. I'm certain that even more important events, if I could say, for instance, World Cup soccer is the biggest event. Not in terms of those who visits the number of teams, but the watching audience is massive. Nothing would stop World Cup soccer, believe you me. But the Olympics, yeah, that might be a bit more fragile. I think what I'd like to see with the Olympics is that they pare it back. You know, let's make it about track and field and swimming, and all the rest have world championships. They don't need to be playing golf, tennis, or much else. And there are a whole lot of boutique little sports that maybe don't need to feature at all. And make it an event that cities can manage despite the problems they may have in their society. So we're hoping here in Brisbane in 2 Olympics' time that, 1, we can actually afford it, and 2, that we'll cope with the numbers of people who are going to come to Brisbane.
Yeah, the whole inclusion concept is starting to make the Olympics too big, where they've tried to put... I mean, I'm a tennis fan. I love tennis, but tennis does not belong in the Olympics. It's completely insane that it's in there. And now they've got other things. They've got problems where men who want to compete against women are asking to be competing in the games, which is upsetting a lot of people. You've got this idea, even giving awards now, Gary, is considered to be offensive to some generations. The idea that there's a winner is upsetting. So maybe the Olympics is going to have more struggles than just the fact that it's dangerous to compete in these large cities. But look, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. Look, we're going to watch the Paris Olympics and hope that nothing goes wrong and that we get an enjoyable Games.